Thank you so much for joining us online for tonight's event. This panel discussion on Muslim representation in media kicks off a series of programs we'll be presenting this fall to celebrate the Asian American Writers Workshop's 30th anniversary. We are calling this series and campaign AAWW at 30, and we are so glad to welcome all of you tonight as we kick things off with Aman, Zeshawn, Aizzah, and Adam. To introduce myself briefly, my name is Lily Philpott. I'm the programs manager at the Asian American Writers Workshop, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to our virtual event space. Please do say hi. Let us know in the chat where you're watching from. I am speaking to you all from Brooklyn, New York, which is on ancestral and unceded Canarsie and Munsee Lenape land. For those of you who are new to the AAWW in our 30th year, we are a national nonprofit organization dedicated to uplifting Asian diasporic literature and storytelling. We hold frequent conversations like this one, organize community arts programming in New York City high schools and senior centers, run fellowship programs for emerging writers of color, and publish an award-winning online literary magazine called The Margins. This retrospective series, AAWW at 30, will explore the values and ideas that lie at the heart of the workshop's mission. From the complexities of representation to the need for an artistic home to interrogating our editorial and archival legacies, this series of events will serve not only as a retrospective of our rich and layered history, but also as a resounding call to envision our future together. Keep an eye out for more information on those events on our website at aaww.org. During tonight's event, we ask that all audience members practice nonviolence in the chat. Comments that are racist, transphobic, homophobic, ableist, and/or misogynist will be flagged, and the person will be removed from this event. We will have time for audience Q&A at the end of the hour. You can ask your questions via the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. I am going to introduce our panelists one by one, and then we'll turn the metaphorical mic over to Adam Gagan, who will moderate our conversation. I do want to note that unfortunately, Sahar Jahani, who is scheduled to join us this evening, can no longer make it, and she will be missed. To begin with, Aman Ali is a storyteller based in New York City and the producer of the award-winning documentary Two Gods that aired on PBS this past summer. Backed by Sundance and the Tribeca Film Institute, the film was heralded as an official critics' pick by the New York Times and has won awards for Best Documentary Feature at several top-tier film festivals. He's made appearances on dozens of media outlets such as the New York Times, BuzzFeed, CNN, NBC News, HBO, BBC, and NPR. He first gained fame for being the co-creator of the social media phenomenon 30 Mosques in 30 Days, a 25,000-mile road trip he took to all 50 states in the US, with the mission of telling groundbreaking and profound stories about Muslims in America. Zeshawn Ali is originally from Ohio and is a graduate of Tisch School of the Arts at NYU. Two Gods is his first feature film and has received support from ITVS, Tribeca Film Institute, Ford Foundation, Sundance Institute, Doc Society, Points North Institute, and IFP. He is a member of the Brooklyn Filmmakers Collective and Meerkat Media and is currently based in New York. Aizzah Fatima is a writer, playwright, and actress based in New York City who works in TV, film, commercials, and theater. She wrote and produced a one-woman play touching on themes of Muslim identity, sexuality, bullying, and racial profiling, which was performed at over 30 college campuses nationwide. In addition to acting, she was also commissioned to collaborate on 4 original children's musicals and write the book for one of them through a grant from the Doris Duke Foundation for the Brooklyn Children's Theater. She joins us today from Los Angeles, where we were thrilled to hear she is doing press for Americanish. And finally, Adam Gagan is an actor, storyteller, and artistic director of Performing Arts Mosaic. Inspired by a multi-ethnic Judeo-Christian Islamic upbringing, Adam's artistic efforts aim to bring people together in celebration of creative expression by communities of color. Originally from Little Havana, Miami, Adam moved to New York City to pursue acting and for a position with the Juilliard School. He has since starred in various award-winning television series and built a vibrant and diverse community through PAM. Thank you all again for being here. Please join me in welcoming our panelists, and I will turn it over to Adam.
Lily, thank you for that beautiful introduction. Assalamu alaikum to all of our panelists, and hello to everyone at home. We are very excited to be doing this. As Lily mentioned, I am an actor now based in New York City. And for many of us actors, we were out of acting work for a good year and a half at best, and a little bit more. But I'll say that last month, on August 12th, something pretty incredible happened. I had a very incredible day. On August 12th, I got news that I got a part in The Equalizer, and it was a recurring role as a detective, Detective Lou Davis, which was really great. So that broke the dry spell for me, but that wasn't what was incredible that day. What was incredible is that my wife's water also broke that day, and now we have a little baby girl with us. So that is very, very exciting. And I'd like to welcome Fiamma, my baby, and my wife Pam here as well. Hi. There she is. All right. Now, for our panelists, they have also had their metaphorical babies released into the world very recently. For Zeshawn and Aman, they had their movie on PBS come out, Two Gods. And for Aizzah, her movie American-ish just came out. I have not seen American-ish yet, but I have read the reviews and they are quite great. Aizzah is a writer, director, and actor. And I will start off with an introductory question for Aizzah, and then for the rest of us. What first inspired you to work in media?
Woody Allen minus the sexual harassment cases against him.
Minus that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I love that, Adam, though. I love that. I mean, I do respect him as a creator and a funny man, for sure. I relate. Yeah, I mean, what inspired me is, often we have a lot of stories in the world now, I think, exist around Muslim male identity or told by Muslim men. But I still feel like there's a huge lack of the American Muslim voice. And even when those stories are being told, they're never really being told by American Muslim women. So for me, that was really important to tell authentic, nuanced stories of the community and the women that I come from and that I see, and how funny and flawed and human they are. So for me, it was really, we get into, I think, as Muslims, we get into this like good Muslim, bad Muslim narrative, and this narrative of like positive portrayals of Muslims. So to me, it's like not so much like positive, but it's just more human portrayals of Muslims. So that kind of, I started off with my one-woman show, and that was really based off of interviews I conducted with the American Muslim community in the tri-state area. And the characters in that range from a 6-year-old girl to a 65-year-old woman. So it's always, for me, it's almost like there's like such a diversity of thought and practice within our community. So for me, it's really important to kind of bring that to the forefront. And I'll also say, like, I'm only one person and I can tell so many stories. And that's why it's important for many, many hundreds of us, thousands of us to be telling our stories so we can show the world like all of our diversity.
Very good. Thank you for that answer. Very insightful. Aman and Zeshawn, whoever would like to take it next, I would also like to ask you the same question. What first inspired you to work in media?
You want to take those, Zeshawn? Yeah, I mean, speaking for myself, I grew up, my brother and I both, we grew up as two brown kids in Ohio. And I think for like many of us on this, either watching or participating on this panel, I think we just got fed up and frustrated with not seeing people that looked like us, that spoke like us, that talked like us, that lived life like us. And that was always been our prism in how we want to tell stories is let's see people the way they see themselves. Instead of speaking on behalf of people, even this idea of like telling Muslim stories, well, we're telling a story about a Muslim, not this is what it's like to be Muslim in America. This is what it's like to be a Black Muslim in America. This is what it's like to be XYZ demographic or what have you. And so our prism has always been wanting to see people the way they see themselves, and not us telling those stories, but giving people a platform to tell these stories. And that's what's cool about documentary filmmaking is you can give people that platform. Who cares what a bearded brown kid from Ohio thinks about a Black American Muslim casket maker in Newark, New Jersey? Let's give him a platform to do that and tell his own story. Zeshawn, I don't know if you have any other thoughts to add to that. Or...
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, as Aman said, there's this kind of like this tension sometimes that you want representation, you want to see more sort of stories, more complex portrayals. But I think also, you know, as people navigating society in America, we were sort of like projected this big weight of like capital M Muslim, like across every part of our experience. So it almost seemed like I started craving storytelling that had nothing to do with like my faith or nothing to do with the fabric of my existences that were just about faith. Because in addition to being Muslim, we hold many intersectional identities, we hold many complexities. And I think that that was kind of freeing when I was first starting to kind of like pick up a camera, was like, that question that always guided me was like, what makes this person tick when I was telling a documentary film? Like, what are the things that make them grieve or make them laugh or make them feel joy? Like, religion can be a tapestry of that and play into that, but it doesn't have to be the primary driver of the storytelling. And that to me has always kind of been something that I'm interested in whatever shape that storytelling takes.
It's very beautifully answered. Thank you for that. I also want to give a big thank you to our ASL interpreters tonight, Hijra and Bilkish. And first off, a reminder for myself and for our other panelists to make the job easier on them. Let's try to talk probably at a slower pace than normal. I'm used to talking fast, but I'm gonna slow it down tonight. So slowly and clearly, just to make it easier for our interpreters and for the audience at home. So the first question of the night is, how have you noticed Muslim representation in the media change? And what factors contributed to that change? And that could be like from since you got involved with it, or since you were a consumer as a brown kid in Ohio. How have you seen it change? What do you think contributed to that?
Aizzah, you want to take that first?
Absolutely, yeah. I think just working in New York City as an actor too, it's just a lot of the job is like you're auditioning, right? So I feel like I've been in the industry for 10 years, and the big changes I've seen is like there used to be really no roles 10 years ago for people, and I feel like really since big change, everyone was looking for like the authentic hijabi Muslim woman role. Like it just existed, just even in commercials or on TV and films, there were just a lot more of these roles were becoming available. And then like things really shifted during the presidency too, because then I started seeing like, you know, it's been such a '20s tall, leggy, blonde. I'd be like, oh, that's definitely not me. So I don't know where I fit into this category. And I think that now it's like there's so much of this, and they're like somebody who identifies as Muslim or has worn a hijab at some point in their life or is currently wearing it, which to me it really does kind of warm my heart, because I think there's still a lot of this happening when people are creating roles, and it's usually creating these Muslim female roles in the media right now, and oftentimes they're actually casting non-Muslim people to play those roles too. So it is kind of heartwarming to see like all the changes that have happened, and I think we have a long way to go. And even for me as an actor, I think I'm definitely seeing like more things that are open to me playing a detective or Adam playing a detective. Happening, whereas this wasn't even happening, like I would say 4 or 5 years ago, this wasn't happening. So there's definitely a big change in the industry that way. I think people are more conscious of it, and they're trying to do the right thing. And there's a big push right now to hire people behind the scenes, you know, not just in front of the camera, but also behind the camera to tell more authentic stories. And I think as more and more, you know, to like write and produce like those stories, the world will definitely change.
Aizzah, that was very well put. You were breaking up towards the end. but I will second all of that, especially in the character breakdowns that I've seen from casting. A lot of times now, the last line is open to all ethnicities, which is really nice. And it's a new line that I had not seen, even a year prior. And yeah, like Aizzah said, before, a lot of the roles were kind of stereotypical, where it was halal guy roles, all the time. But now they are opened up to giving more detective roles or cop roles or, other kind of roles that are more diverse. So yeah, I have noticed a positive change. And Aman, would you like
but I will say, Adam, I was talking
Yeah.
to everybody should know this too. I was talking to a casting director, and they said that when they're putting out roles for like open to all ethnicities, what they're getting submitted for is 80% white, 10% maybe black, or 5% Hispanic, and the other 5% is whoever. So I think the onus is it's like at every level of our industry, we have to have agents and managers who are conscious of this. We have to have casting people, and we have to have producers and directors who are hiring to be making those decisions. Because if 80% of the people you're seeing are still white, then most likely the person who gets the role is not going to be a POC or a diverse, right? So so there's almost also an interesting thing that's happening in the industry in terms of open to all ethnicities.
Okay, so on the casting side, they're saying they're open, but the managers and agents aren't submitting that many actors of color for those same roles. That's what you're saying, right? 80% still white that are being submitted as actors. I think that's what Aizzah's saying. Aman, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, and only speaking from my own experience, I agree with all that was said, that yes, there are some good things and we still have a long way to go. Speaking from my own experience, what I'm realizing is we have, and when I say we as creatives, artists, whatever you want to call us, we have a lot more leverage and power than what we realize. We can turn down projects. If there are roles that are asking us to do things, we have a lot more power than what we did many, many years ago to say, no, I don't want that character to do that. Now, obviously, it's easier said than done. It depends on the project and what have you. But in our experience, for example, we sat down, our film, just for those who haven't seen it, it's about a Black American Muslim casket maker in Newark, New Jersey, that takes two boys under his wing and he teaches them how to be men. So these boys have to wash bodies, build caskets. And so through the lens of death, he's teaching these boys about life. And in doing this film, we sat down with a lot of distributors and programmers. And I remember sitting down with one programmer that said, hey, this is a great film, but we're already supporting a film about a family in Iran. And I said, oh, I didn't know you can only have one film. Or what gay film do you have? What white film do you have? Do you have a black film? Like, I didn't know you're just checking off boxes and there's only one film that you can have. And so while there is still a lot that we have to do, a long way to go, we have the power to clap back and challenge people's perceptions of, oh, well, a brown person can't carry this project, or nobody's going to want to see a film about a Muslim woman and her narrative and her story. And so we have the power to clap back. And if they don't like it, we can go somewhere else. There are institutions, there are foundations, there are distributors that have seen the numbers, have seen the metrics, that people want to see these stories. They want to see things. And that's why you've got Marvel doubling down on doing awesome stories about Muslim Americans and including them within the broader Avengers, universe and what have you. And I know I'm rambling, but we have the power more than ever to challenge the status quo. We obviously have a long way to go, and so I don't want to make this seem like this is kumbaya, but I just want to salute all the work that people have had to do for decades and all the stuff that they've had to deal with. And things are changing. And I think what's really exciting is we have the power to be a collective voice to keep pushing this forward.
Okay. And Zeshawn?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely like a shift. And I think as Aizzah said, there was a really interesting shift that happened post 2016, especially. There was already the post 9/11 climate that we were existing in as sort of media makers and filmmakers and artists, but there suddenly became this hyper awareness that was both great because as a storyteller, so suddenly we were getting meetings and suddenly people were reaching out to us proactively, and it felt less sort of isolating. But then in some ways, there's this really sort of like complex like waters to navigate, because speaking from experience coming from the documentary world, like there was this like hyper intense desire to get people to have the story that we were trying to tell fit into this sort of like overly political lens. And suddenly like you're tasked with being the sort of like voice or sort of like megaphone of a movement or of a moment in time or of an entire identity. And for us, and for my sensibilities as a filmmaker, like I was making work, and Aman and I were making work that was like quiet and reflective and like about death and about sort of like grief and loss. And it was like, it had nothing to do with politics. It had nothing to do with the presidency. It had nothing to do with immigration. It had nothing to do with these big headlines. And so I think that while the access has maybe increased, I think we're in this sort of moment where like the demand, especially when we're talking about from a non-Muslim lens, is really high. We have to, as Aman said, like hold those gatekeepers and sort of like people that are tasked with telling those stories and let them know that like the storytelling does not need to be limited to just a mirror that's reflecting what is sort of like right in front of us. It can go deeper than that. Like our storytelling can hold more layers. It can be sort of like complex and fragmented and messy. It can be all of these different things that doesn't have to sort of like fit into the box of like what is going on with Islam in America right now. Like that's the only stories we're interested in hearing from. So I think that's the sort of like struggle, but I don't know. I mean, that's always kind of been a struggle. So I think like that's just something that we're going to have to keep chipping away at for a while.
So Zeshawn, do you feel like a responsibility to tackle certain issues with your artistic work? Or is it all about the art and the story you want to tell?
I think especially when you're starting in the industry, I mean, like I feel like, especially with this first film that we made, this was our first feature. And for, me, I had never made a film before. So there was this like high expectation. Those expectations were pretty high. Like I did feel like a lot of people were trying to kind of like push it into a sort of box, or, I was in the documentary world and I was sort of making our documentary. It's a black and white documentary. It's very sort of like a little bit more cinematic than like what a standard documentary is. And a lot of people were easily dismissing it as like, okay, well, if it's not political, then like you're just doing this little like artsy thing and like good luck to you. Like an audience will not want to sort of like embrace that or engage in that type of storytelling, which for us, we had to really fight for our seats at the table in a lot of like senses. And even like when we had seats at those table, we had to fight for sort of like equal space amongst like other films that were, especially when you're doing something that's deeply human. It's coded language sometimes on the other end that you're learning from people is like, they're not interested in deeply human stories. They're interested in identity politics sometimes. And like, that's what you have to kind of like move through. Like, those are the sort of like things that you have to push past and say like, I'm not interested in that. Like, I'm interested in giving you something that is like complicated. And I'm interested in maybe giving you something that is only for a Muslim audience. Like I'm maybe not like doing this for a lens that is outside of the Muslim experience, because our people need to also speak to each other in addition to sort of speaking to a broader audience. So it's like those complications and those expectations are still there. But it was definitely, I can only speak from the documentary lens. That was definitely high. Those expectations were like pretty large for us.
Yeah, I could see that being very stressful. And from the parts of Two Gods that I saw, it was very cinematic and very beautifully directed. So congrats on that. On the production side, and I guess this question is for Aman and Aizzah, have you encountered any difficulty producing work that delivers authentic representation when a collaborator had a different vision? Now, Aman, your collaborator might have been Zeshawn, or you might have had other collaborators. You can let us know.
There wasn't so much of a tension. Tension's not even the right word. I think for us in a documentaries, it's all about building trust. Your people are being brave and vulnerable and wanting to share their life and trusting you with it. And for us, it was very important to build that trust. Newark, New Jersey is a grossly misunderstood community. If you've spent time there, it's portrayed racistly, quite frankly, as a city of crime, poverty, and all this like nonsense. And that's really aggravating and really frustrating because there are several generations upon generations of people that proudly call Newark, New Jersey their home. And so for us, we realize that there's a reason why people live here. There's a reason why people are proud to be there. So like I said before, let's see people the way they see themselves. And so for us, how we addressed that was we wanted to spend as much time with people as possible. We were super transparent. We sat down with people in our film, and we don't call them subjects, they are our friends. And we sat down with them and we told them, this is the story that we're trying to tell. Throughout the production process, we showed them footage saying, hey, remember that a couple weeks ago when we filmed that? This is what it's going to look like. They saw rough cuts, they saw final cuts, they saw things along the way, and they gave their input, said, okay, take this out, do this and that. And it was a collaborative process so that once the film was released into the world, they were comfortable, and not only comfortable, they were proud. And that was most important, is making sure that this is their story to tell. Do they feel like that is their story that's being seen by the world, and not some director or some producer's interpretation of what they think this story should be? And so we tried to very much make this as collaborative of a process. And so just internally working, it was pretty smooth. Now, obviously, like with any project off the ground, you got to raise money, get funding. That is not an easy thing. But it was just a continuous grind, and having a plan, really sticking to the story and our passion and our vision is what we were very fortunate to have people come on board. And a lot of institutions, we were very fortunate to vouch for us and really take a chance on us. We're first-time filmmakers in telling a story, and it's no easy task. And it's something that we're really grateful for, because this is not a story that me and Zeshawn did by ourselves. This is something that the community of Newark, Hanif, our casket maker in the film, and so many organizations, we really felt like we had a village behind us in wanting to tell it.
Yeah, something else I think you guys should be proud of is that being that you're first-time filmmakers and you did get this project, accepted and published and all that, you inspired a lot of people that are first-time or not even first-time yet, but considering doing it. It's definitely an inspiration. So thank you for that. Aizzah, I will present the same question to you. Have you encountered any difficulty producing work that delivers authentic representation when a collaborator had a different vision?
So many difficulties. Where do I begin? I mean, it's not even about collaborators. So our film is the first American Muslim female-led rom-com in America by a diverse group of American Muslim women, right? So Iman Zawari is the director. My producer, co-writer, Egyptian American, and visibly Muslim. She wears a hijab, and then I'm obviously not visibly Muslim, and and also South Asian, American, and so and being two women trying to tell a female-centered story, it's been like a big challenge, honestly, because this film is made outside of the studio system. It's completely made independently, but it is a big little film. Aside, we were filming in New York City, which is one of the hardest places to film ever. And, we have investors, and we're really proud that all of our investors are actually also American Muslims. And that was a struggle, I have to say, because for years, we were trying to raise funds for this film. We would meet like these, all respect to uncles and aunties, but mostly uncles who with money. And I literally had like people saying to me, it's like, oh, I only give to poor people, and you don't look like poor people to me, so I'm not going to give. Literally had uncles saying like while they're sitting in their mansions and their big old townhouses, and I'm like, okay, all right, fine. Yeah, I don't look like poor people. I think it's our community has a long way to go, right? I feel like our parents' generation came here and they built mosques, and that was their legacy, and that remains their legacy in some ways. And I feel like us as kind of the younger generation, I would like for us to see us build artists and cultural capital that way. So I think we're getting there. We were able to finally fund the film, but it was a long struggle. And now, to be frank, with the distribution, so we're doing festivals, we're winning a bunch of awards. We won 3 already. We have like 10 other festivals lined up, and some of them are very prestigious festivals, and some of them are very mainstream, others are more niche. So it's quite a mixed kind of festival approach that we're taking. But of it is to create this grassroots buzz about the film, because again, I think that when it comes to the Muslim American female or Muslim female representation period in America, I think what honestly non-Muslim people want to see in places of power is like the Muslim woman getting like, taking off her hijab in the name of Western feminism. And I feel like that's BS, because yes, I grew up with a lot of girls who put on a hijab and took it off, and they were trying to figure out their identity. And it was never in the name of Western feminism. In fact, all of my friends who do cover their hair, they're doing it in the name of feminism. Yes, that is their feminism, that is their activism. So it's just, again, I feel like those kind of authentic representations are missing. And a lot of like these sort of bigger festivals, if you look at their roster and you see what kinds of things they program, it's always like that. Omar or Osama who got radicalized in Brooklyn and wanted to join ISIS. They love that story, or like the woman who's like gonna get stoned to death for whatever, or whatever, you name it, you name a trope. And I feel like those are the stories, and oftentimes the stories are not told by Muslim people. So I think it's a long road, and it's just, again, I keep saying that we just need more people in places of power. Like we need people at like, Aman was mentioning earlier, like foundations and like Sundance and Ford and whoever, these people who are giving money, but there's still, I feel like money is available, but to certain things, not to like a happy, funny rom-com with American Muslim leads. So we have a ways to go, and hopefully we'll get there. I think, again, I'm a little sad that Sahar isn't here, because I know Sahar is working on another rom-com right now. When I think it was publicly released with Mindy Kaling's production company based on a book, and it's also, I think, South Asian female characters. So I mean, we're the first, so it's like the hardest route for us, because we honestly, distributors are looking at this, they're like, well, we don't know what this is, we've never seen it before, there's never been another rom-com with American Muslim women, like, well, I don't know who will watch this. But what's really great also is like we're showing them who will watch this. So we're selling out screenings in every city we're in. We're sold out tonight in LA. We sold out in Cincinnati, so where I knew nobody, but it was amazing. It's amazing to see like not only just the Muslim community coming out and supporting it, but also in Arkansas, where there was the Muslim community, it was just older middle-aged white people coming out and supporting it and laughing along and loving it and telling us how relatable the characters were. So I think that's how you change the landscape, tell the very specific stories that are true to your heart, and they become universal, because there's universality in the specificity when it comes to art, for sure.
Aizzah, thank you for answering that. I hope you guys can still hear me, because you might have cut out for a little bit. Aman, you can hear me? Okay, cool. Yeah, I cannot imagine. Actually, I can't imagine what that discussion was like with the Desi uncle asking for money for an art project, because I'm sure many of you have disappointed your your families when you decided not to become doctors or lawyers or engineers and decided to work in media. But my next question, Aman, you answered this early, actually, and you answered it quite beautifully. The question is, how do you evaluate the success of your work when it comes to representing Muslim Americans? And Aman, I think you said something about, do they feel like their story is being told at the end of the project? So that was very beautifully put.
Yeah, and just to echo that, I think very oftentimes as creatives, especially as creatives of color, I always call it, we sometimes yearn for white validation, like, oh, we need this newspaper to write about us, we need to win these awards. But I'm like, I don't even read half these newspapers. Why am I seeking this or that or these awards? Or like, I don't even listen to that radio station. Why do I need them to write about it or this or that? Yes, all that stuff is nice, but for me, how I know we did right, our proudest thing is the people in our film really enjoyed it. And I noticed, and obviously it's hard not to think about those things, not think about ticket sales and metrics and this and that. But we try not to let that be an obsession. And we realize that when we focus on getting this story right and really making the people in our film feel heard, all that other stuff, all the success, all that accolades and all that stuff that we were very fortunate to get was a byproduct of it. I don't know, Zeshawn, if you have any thoughts there. Or...
Well, yeah, I mean, I think, there is, the audience is kind of looking for that sort of like deep humanness. And I think like the validation that we've been taught to seek, it's not that we're actively seeking it. It's like, unfortunately, the currency in our industry is still such that like if you don't have a review in these publications and you don't have this film festival, then distributors aren't going to consider you with the same level of weight. So it's like there is this sort of challenge where you have to kind of like still work within this system, but then also prove that like you don't need this system at all, or you're not interested in this system. You're just interested in speaking to an audience with sort of like some degree of legitimacy. So there's this like complex dance that you have to do with, especially on the distribution side, because it's like, you know, at the end of the day, one of my good friends who's like a festival programmer like was telling me this, and it's true. Like if every BIPOC filmmaker and artist did not submit to Sundance one year and chose not to and chose to withhold their film, Sundance would lose its credibility as a festival that year, because they need our stories. Like they need our stories to stay relevant and to meet our society where they're at. The problem is that the currency is still that if you don't have these big tentpole gatekeeping organizations backing your project, you're still going to be like deemed like not accessible or not popular or not an easy sell. Like there's this like coded language that's always used. And so it's kind of like building trust within your own audience. It's kind of like proving, like what Aizzah said, like we're selling out shows. There is a demand. These are the reviews from people that have seen the film. Like we're less interested in press. Like these are the testimonials from people that have left our screenings. It's like, you really need to prove that there's like a passion behind like the work that you're creating. And that passion comes from you, but it also comes from the people that are going to engage with your film like directly. And I think that is the way that we kind of like get ourselves into these spaces more and allow ourselves to stay in those spaces. You know, so it's, yeah, I think like the building of the audience there is like a constant challenge, but it's there. I mean, like, you know, we are 4 people that are, you know, talking about growing up and wanting these stories. And we probably talk about that with our friends and families. It's like the desire for this type of content is like active, and it's like, it's very tangible. It's just like, we have to create the content to meet that.
Okay. And Aizzah, I will ask you the same question and I'll add a little bit to it. How do you evaluate the success of your work at representing Muslim Americans? How do you know when you've done a good job at it? And on the flip side, how would you know if you had fallen short?
Yeah, I'll say like what I've learned is like I've been at this for a long time in various mediums. So from theater to like short films to like I just filmed a TV pilot and to like this film that's out into the world right now and getting that feedback. I think the thing is this, I've learned like the Muslim community is very diverse. There are very different thoughts and opinions. I will never be able to please all of them. And we see this all the time when a show like Rami comes out, and it's a lot of it is around sex and sexuality, and people get very up in a huff about it. But we have to remember that's his experience. He can only tell that story from his own lived experience, right? So I think that's something for us to just keep in mind as creators. We're never going to be able to please everyone. But I think to me, what I get like value from is like when women come up to me and tell me that they saw themselves being represented for the first time. And this ranges from women in their 20s or teens to even, you know, to women in their 60s and 70s. You know, I recently we had a screening in New York. It was amazing. Again, sold out 400-seat theater in the middle of this whole COVID thing. And we ended up winning the audience award. You know, me afterwards, a Pakistani lead, auntie, really probably my mom's age, as I'm guessing, and she was like, you know, thank you for showing that, like the woman you portrayed. I was trying to climb up a corporate ladder in a very much a white male dominated world, and it's really a ladder that's not people like her, and that's kind of that storyline. And she was just like, you know, my older sister always had these rebellious ideas that didn't like sit with my family, and it was a very tough kind of life for her because she wanted to do her own thing. She wanted to have a career. I can only imagine like this auntie must be in her 60s or 70s, so we're talking like 50 years ago, what that was like for a Pakistani Muslim woman in America or in Pakistan must have been very hard, right? So, but again, she thanked me, and this happens all the time at all kinds of screenings. I had a man in Arkansas tell me how much he related to the female characters because like I grew up with 6 sisters and this was my story, and you know, he related to all the women in the film. So it's lovely. I think not just Muslim people, but everyone, when people tell me like they saw themselves represented, that really feels nice. So That's what the work is, I think, for artists, right?
Right. Beautifully put. And that brings us into our next question, our next topic. And yeah, you kind of brought it up when you said, Rami, who do you feel accountable when you make your work? Each of us represent only one facet of Muslim American identity, and there are so many stories to be told. So how do you navigate this? And anybody could take that question.
I think I would say just tell the story that is the most authentic to you or to your subject if you're in that documentary world, right? To the people whose lives you want to portray. And I mean, for me, the Women in Americanish, they're all based off of my play, which was an interview-based play. So these are other women's lives, not my own personal life, that I'm, portraying from that theater medium to now film. I think as long as you stay true to that, then I think you've done your job. Because I think that is, I'm always thinking as a creator, I'm like, how can I bring more people on board, highlight more stories, not just one? And that's all you can do. And you're not going to please everybody with that. Someone won't like it, and you can't be worried about that. I think you have to tell that authentic story and just make sure that you do well by the subject. And that's all you can do.
Yeah, what I'll say, and this is a prism that I've always asked myself with any project I take on is, what is the story that I'm trying to tell? And why do I think I am the person to tell that story? Very oftentimes I'll have a dope idea, but I'll be like, why would I be the person to tell that story? That should be somebody else. And so I've let that be my guide in my prism. And that's not a perfect, template. I'm not always going to see myself as the right person to do that. But I've always tried to let that be my guide in terms of telling stories.
Okay. And to move to our next question, and Aizzah, I'm going to answer this one for you. Okay. So the next question is, what relationships, connections, and conversations have resulted from your work? And you reminded me of your play, your one-woman show, because that's how we met. You were traveling to Fort Lauderdale, and this is when I was still living in Florida. You did your one-woman show there, and our connection kind of came from that because I went to see the show. But I do want you to answer that. What relationships, connections, conversations have resulted from your work?
Yeah, again, like I said, I've always had constantly lived in Scotland, Inverness, which is where the Loch Ness Monster is, if you guys know that area. And I did the show, and it was like a full house, 200-300 seat theater. And afterwards, there was a Scottish guy who told me that the 65-year-old woman in my play who's on the phone trying to set up a marriage, she's like trying to set up her daughter's marriage through a series of like calls she's trying to make to prospective suitors' moms. That's the character. She's like, that reminded him so much of his dad. So it's just, you never know. And I have to say also, the way Americanish came about, I never would have met Aman Ali, who's my collaborator and director in this, if it wasn't for the work, and we met because she happened to be in New York. I was performing my one-woman show, and she happened to be in the audience that night, and we connected and bonded, and then took us 8 years to make this film, but here we are, and now we're like showing it everywhere. Yeah, so there's so many more, or like the Afghani girl who was a refugee from Afghanistan. Probably 7 or 8 years ago, I think I met at Fordham University, who was just like, I wanted to study music, but now I'm studying law. I've never met a Muslim artist in America. I didn't even know they existed, or women Muslim artists. And she's like, now because I've met you, I think I'll pursue both. I'm going to do music and I'm going to do law. There's so many stories from every performance. I think, Adam, you told me you had never seen a one-person show before mine. So, yeah. So and that that always kind of happens. There's always stories after every performance, after every experience, of like how you connect to people at a human level, and that's always also lovely because we're all just the same, right? That's what that shows me when I travel throughout the world performing my show, or like with my film now, traveling throughout the United States, from the South to the Midwest to the Northeast and LA and everywhere. It's how connected we are as people. Even though we might this might look different, but like we all want the same things. We all want family, take care of our children and our parents, and it's all the same.
Okay. And Zeshawn, as the only panelist that I had not met before today, I want to ask you the same question. What relationships, connections and conversations have resulted from your work?
Yeah, I mean, I think like it was interesting because we released our film. The first time I've ever released art or media into the world was during the pandemic. You know, it was a very sort of like interesting experience. And you know, the process of making the film, I think like the thing I'm the most thankful for is the deep sort of connections that I've formed with like the collaborators that I've made, and like that community that like, you know, you have to build for yourself to make the project come to life. As Aizzah said, like you meet people that are going to be, you know, friends and collaborators and become like family. Like they're going to be the people that are going to like help you bring this thing out into the world. But I think releasing work into during the pandemic, it was challenging in some ways, but actually like there was something that was quite like cathartic about it, because, you know, we kind of just had our film and we let it go out into the world, and we've like had people find it in a much more sort of like organic way. So the conversations that we have is not like, it doesn't feel stressful because we're not like at a film festival and we're like nervously waiting for like what people are going to say in real time. We're just kind of like letting our film get out there, and then people are messaging us, or they're saying like, oh, I saw that on TV and like this really moved me in some sort of way, or I've heard about that, like where can I watch it? And I think like that connection is really beautiful to me, because that's how I like sharing art myself and like hearing about it. And it feels like a great sort of way to kind of like build community in that way. But I'm still kind of figuring out in real time. Like, you know, we just released our film a couple of months ago, and I think like people are still finding it in different ways. So I think the community that I'm building afterwards, I think I'm looking forward to growing into. But the collaborators that I formed during the process was like my favorite part of the whole thing.
It's very cool and very, very hopeful too. I'd like to welcome back Lily.
Thank you. I'm so sorry to sort of derail slightly this incredibly rich conversation that you're all having, that I want to close out our hour by making sure that we get to some audience questions, which I have written down here. You're starting to sort of speak to the first question I wanted to ask, but often the Asian American Writers Workshop audience, it's a lot of students, and I'd love to hear if each of you have a little bit of advice for, you know, aspiring screenwriters, documentary filmmakers, actors, how to kind of break into the industry. Are there, you know, groups they should join? Are there people they should know? Yeah, any advice you'd want to share to everyone? Or Aman, can I ask you to go first?
Sure. It's everything. And what's really exciting is, and again, only speaking from our own experiences, as creators of color, and I use a broad term with that, is we're all a closely knit family. We got our film made because we asked questions. There's films we'd like, literally emailed directors that we didn't even know. Like, hey, how'd you do this? We ran into the same problem. Did you have this problem? What did you do? And we went up to filmmakers at film festivals. How did you pull this off? How much did this cost? How did you pitch them? And we're happy to do the same thing in our own lives. Like, if you want to know how to raise money, how to put together a grant, how we got this group on board, we're happy to, you know, put people on game and show people how it's done. And I would say for people that are aspiring to do it is, you got to get up and do it. You got to ask those questions. I know it's nerve-wracking. Like, I don't really know this person, but you'd be surprised if you send a DM or even a nat reply, a tweet or something, you'll be surprised who's going to reply back. A lot of filmmakers and actors and producers and writers, they had people that opened doors for them. And we want to continue doing that as well. And so if you'll want to know how to get started, you just got to ask. I wish there was a magic thing saying, go do this or go do that, but figure out what you know how to do, figure out what you're stuck on. There's a 1000% chance that somebody had this exact same problem at a certain point in their career, and they'll show you how to do it, and are happy to open doors and make intros and opportunities, because that's what we did. People vouched for us, people introduced us and co-signed us, and literally we got funding from an organization because somebody at festival pulled somebody inside and said, yo, these two kids over here, you need to talk to them. After years of ignoring our emails, this guy said, okay, sure. That's all it takes sometimes, is being at the right place at the right time. And so, yeah, so I would say just ask lots and lots of questions.
I love that. Slightly relatedly, my colleagues have been posting our panelists' social media handles and everything in the chat, so please do follow them and ask questions. Aizzah, I saw you unmute yourself as well if you wanted to add to that.
Yeah, it was pretty much what Aman has already covered. I think just keep doing the thing. Don't be like, one day I'm gonna write this thing. Oh, when I'm 30, I'll do it. Or when I retire, I'll do it. I meet so many people who say things like that. And I think that's just silly. I think you can start writing the thing now, make the things, go on every audition, create a, group with your friends, just like sit around, read plays, read scripts, read TV shows, like depending on which medium you're in, and do that's on your own time. So I think in this day and age, this idea that like, oh, it's too hard or I can't break in, or I think that's just a silly idea because things have gotten so easy. Just pick up a camera and shoot something and put it on YouTube, at the least. And I think if not to like, you may get discovered, maybe that'll happen, that'd be great, but also just to work on your craft and to get good at what you do. You need practice, and it's not going to happen if you just sit there and dream about it. It's going to only happen if you pick up the thing and make it happen.
Thank you both. I have just a couple more questions. I'm aware that we're approaching the end of the hour. I'd love to hear from all of you what projects you're envisioning and taking on next, what we should be looking out for. And actually, Adam, I wanted to invite you to start if there's anything in the pipeline that we should keep an eye out for.
Oh yeah, thank you so much. So the episodes of The Equalizer that I'm going to be on, those come out August 24th and then the following week as well. So those are the things that I'm most excited on. And then as more recent, been going on more auditions, it's been picking up. So hopefully, inshallah, something else pans out there, and there may be something else down the pipeline.
Sorry, August 24th, next year?
I'm sorry, October 24th.
Gotcha.
Thank you for catching that. October 24th. Yeah, it's The Equalizer. It's on CBS and it airs Sunday nights. I believe Sunday at like 10 p.m.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Aman, I saw you unmute. What are you up to?
My next project, I'm getting married next month. So that is my project that I'm working on that's dropping October the 16th. So that is at the moment. But my brother and I, we're going to hit the ground running. We've already got we're wrapping up our impact campaign with our film. We're doing a lot of community screenings and other events throughout the country. We're doing these death preparation workshops where you watch the film and then we bring in licensed attorneys on how to put together wills, mental health experts on how to talk about death with your family. How do you sit down with your parents and say, Mom, Dad, if you're ever on a ventilator, what should we do? How to normalize these things and prepare people for death. And so we're doing a lot of these workshops in communities around the country. And then, yeah, my brother and I are bouncing around ideas and have already started the groundwork for our next film. And so, yeah, we're super excited to move forward with that as well.
Amazing. So Sean, is there anything you wanted to add? Aman covered it.
Yeah, I mean, I think like also just like kind of going to momentarily just advocate for the importance of like, I think, we just released a film, we put so much into it, but we're like going into sort of like, I'm personally going into very like active rest. I think like, like don't also feel like you need to, my board of advice is like, don't feel like you need to always give everyone everything of yourself all the time. Like the most beautiful things, the most beautiful ideas will come to you. And when you feel that impulse to really pick up a camera or start writing or sort of like start shooting something, like it will guide you to that. Don't feel like you always need to force it. And like, your most well-rested self will be the best version of yourself creatively. So like, I'm just trying to like decompress and like process like what just happened. But as Aman said, like we're thinking and we're hoping to kind of like lean into new projects and like kind of dream bigger for ourselves now that we've proven that we can, I think, do it once. That's an exciting place to be in, to feel like, okay, we did it once, like let's see what we can do again.
So amazing and such good advice to everyone here as well. Aizzah, what are you working on?
So just American-ish is doing a bunch of screenings. Some of them we have announced and others we're not able to announce, but there's like 15 screenings coming up between now and December at various festivals. And if you can follow American-ish Film on all of this, is Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, you can keep track of that. And then the next project I'm working on right now, I'm super, and again, it goes back to this question of me always question, I'm like, okay, how do I get many female voices involved in telling their stories? So we were able to get some funding to create an all-American Muslim female writers room late last year for a sketch-based project, TV pilot. It's called Muslim Girls DTF, Discuss Their Faith. Wink, wink. It's with Nagin Farsad, Zainab Johnson, Theo Yaqub, Roxanne Zadeh, and then myself. And we're just getting ready to film the pilot because we won a few awards and got some funding for it. And I think, again, it just comes from us putting one foot in front of the other and just doing the work. We just we made a web series, which was just Talking Heads 2 years ago in 2019. We put that out there and then we were able to apply for more funding, create this writer's room through the Roddenberry Impact Award and the Yes and Laughter Lab, pitch incubator and stuff. And so we're just getting ready to film that and then get that out into the world. And I'm excited about that. So thank you.
So amazing. The last question I have actually comes from me. It's a question I love to end our events with. And I want to ask all of you for recommendations and to sort of call absent friends into our space, into our Zoom room. We'd love to hear, who are the filmmakers who you love? What are the movies that you want to recommend to our audience that we should be following, be going out and watching? Is there music? Are there books? Are there TV shows that we should look for? Adam, yeah.
Well, I recently saw Bassam Tariq's Mogul Mowgli, and that was absolutely incredible. I really enjoyed the way that it was done, the way it was shot, and the story that was told. That it was, it was a story about a Muslim, but it was subtle, and it was like him being Muslim wasn't the only aspect, of his life. And I really liked the way that it was put out there. So I would highly recommend that movie.
Amazing.
I'm going to echo that. Bassam Tariq's the homie. We did the 30 Mosques, 30 Days project together. And I don't know if y'all saw the news, but he's directing his next project. He's directing Blade. Marvel, he's going to be a part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Mahershala Ali is going to be playing Blade, and super exciting. Mahershala Ali literally went to Marvel and said, I want to do a Marvel movie. I want to be Blade. Like, you talk about clout, you talk about leverage. That's how it's done. And Bassam, amazing. And it's like lightning in a bottle. And so I definitely recommend checking out his work because it is fantastic. And I'm just super thrilled and excited to see what Blade's going to look like under their vision.
Zeshawn, any recommendations to share?
I'm just going to second Adam's recommendation, Mogul Mowgli. I just saw it last week and it's just like fresh in my mind. It's like beautiful example of like authentic collaborative filmmaking through like a very like human lens. Great filmmaking.
And man, I'm going to be the odd person out here. I have not seen Mogul Mowgli. I do not know Bassam Tariq. Sorry, dudes. All the dudes here seem to know each other, but I don't know him. So sorry, guys. Can't recommend.
Ladies then.
But I know, but isn't it sad? Like, who are the Muslim female women who are making work that I could recommend to you right now? Like, I can't think of any. Who made a film I could recommend you that's a Muslim? So yeah, we have a long way to go, but I will say there's a lot of like female creators I'm really attracted to. Michaela Cole is a superstar. She also started from the one-person show world and kind of angled into like a lot of TV work. I think the female characters on Killing Eve give me so much inspiration. I love that show. It's a Asian American woman and then this other thing. I will end there.
Amazing. Thank you all. Well, we are just a couple of minutes past the hour, so I will close this out for the evening. But just a huge thank you to all of our panelists, to our audience for joining us. Thank you so much for this conversation. There are some also incredible recommendations coming in the chat for some female-led projects. So please do check those out. I want to be sure to thank our incredible ASL interpreters, Hidra and Bilquis, who was on screen earlier. They are part of Pro Bono ASL. They are amazing. And we are so grateful to have them to help make our event fully accessible. We have a huge, like a very packed slate of events coming up this fall. You can learn more about what we're doing at aaww.org/events. Please follow us. Let us know what you'd like to see from us as well. And we hope we'll see you online at another event. We're going to play a little bit more music, put some slides on screen for a moment so you can connect in the chat if you'd like to. But again, thank you everyone for spending your Friday evenings with us. Thank you, Aman, Zeshawn, Adam, Aizzah. Thank you, Hidra and Bilquis as well. Take care, everybody.